Today I want to share with you a quilt I'm working on at the moment. It's a gift for a family member and they requested colourful, so that was the brief. And as you can see, I'm right on it. Lots and lots of scraps have gone into this, and I'm sort of halfway through, I would say. And as I'm adding more rows and build up more blocks, I thought I'd share the process with you. Apart from the fabrics, the materials I'm using are a rotary cutter and a variety of quilting rulers. Some of the elements are 4.5 inch and 2.5 inches, so these are coming in really handy. And the individual blocks I square up using a larger one. Now this turntable style cutting mat, it's by the Quilted Bear, but I'm sure there's other brands probably available. I tell you, it's been such a revelation because it's saving a lot of time. I use it for a lot of the small elements that I'm cutting, and you know, if you've made a cut, it is super quick just to turn the whole thing without moving anything else and then carrying on cutting, and you don't have to sort of change position, walk around. So very handy indeed. This wool felted mat is quite thick. It's something else that I use quite a lot for ironing on. It sort of reflects a lot of the heat and the steam back up, and is very effective. Right, so I haven't followed a pattern for this quilt. Literally made it up on the spot. So you could say it's freestyle, I suppose. The elements are all made up of the 2.5 inch strips. So I cut them into squares and 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. And then I've got 4.5 inch squares that I've used that ruler for. So those are basically the 3 sizes that I'm putting together. Step 1 is to join one of the squares to one of the oblong strips, and also an oblong strip to the 4.5 inch squares. I've not really done much planning at this stage, just sort of added together what looks nice, bit of variety, bit of contrast, you know, sort of richer colours and lighter colours, a nice mix. And also I varied the positions of how I was adding the strips onto the squares. And I mean, some pieces where the pattern isn't necessarily directional, you know, you're quite flexible, but other than that, I just made sure that I had some with the square at the bottom as well as some where the square's on top. I've prepared these here, and they are at the pressing stage, and as you can see, I chain piece them, and that's something I've talked about in a different video, in the crumb quilting video, which I'm gonna link above for you if you want to have a watch. So no back stitching, because you know, you sort of sew over it in the opposite direction anyway, and that'll secure the threads. So when it comes to pressing, I just wanted to just show you really how I press and give you a few thoughts. Something that I always do is set the seam. So as you can see here, because different fabrics, some are lighter, some are a bit heavier, the tension changes of the thread in relation to the what you're putting under the feed dogs, under the needle, sorry, and sometimes you end up with a bit of a wobbly seam, but setting the seam usually takes care of that. There you go, all done. And while the fabric is hot, I finger press. So I'm just putting this up, folding it up in readiness for the iron. and that gives you really nice and crisp seams. As a beginner, you're probably tempted to iron your quilt blocks like you would iron clothing, you know, where you sort of move back and forth. But what you would actually be doing is sort of push these out of shape, and you would stretch, and you'd sort of end up with creases and deformed seams, really. So pressing is literally just pressing down, giving it a few seconds and setting the seams that way. That's it. So this one is ready for just squaring up. With all these elements, I've given myself about 1/4 inch just for trimming, and the final size that all these four blocks, for want of a better word, are is 6 1/4 inch. And I always use the edge of the this square ruler where the ones are, and have a look that I've got enough either side to trim. And I have a look here that sort of it's fairly aligned. But with this type of quilt, you don't need to be as precise, I think, because it's freestyle anyway. So once these are trimmed, and I do use the turntable for that, I put that corner here so that the one is then opposite. And now I go with the exact 6 1/4 by 6 1/4, and then trim the other 2 edges. And then you'll end up with a nice block like this. What really helps me visualize how it's all coming together is to pin up either on the wall, or, you know, if you have the luxury of having a design wall, or just laying it out on the couch, and seeing how the next row might tie in with what's above it. And then I would lay the next element sort of underneath. And what I've found is quite often you might look at it a day and then you notice things that you really didn't see the first time round. Or sometimes a different pair of eyes, where you've literally placed the same fabric so close together and you cannot see the wood for the trees anymore. So sometimes I wait attaching the next row just for a day or so if I have the time, just to make sure I haven't seen anything. Another tip is you can take a photo on your phone and set it to black and white, and that really highlights the values of the colours, and would show up whether you've got a lot of dark patches, for example, quite close to each other, and whether things are distributed nicely. I just wanted to let you know about which way to press the seams, because I mean, some people like to press open seams, but what I've done for this, each sort of element has a main seam running through, and I've made sure that one row they're going one way, and the previous row they would be going the other, so that you can nest the seams and then you don't have too much bulk. I'm going to carry on with the quilt top, and when I'm at the next stage I'll be back with another video. So the next step would be to prepare it for making the quilt sandwich, and then using, I think I will use basting pins this time to make the quilt sandwich, and then part 3 will be the actual machine quilting and binding. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.